over time, when you start to build that category, the adoption and the need for wanting to adopt new technology does grow. But it took years of education and many rounds of fundraising to really educate the market away from status quo.
Welcome to UpTech Report. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Tom Kieley, who's based in Austin, Texas. He's the CEO and co-founder at SourceDay. Welcome, Tom. Good to have you on.
I appreciate your time and glad to be here.
Now, SourceDay is a supply chain collaboration and performance software. So for those who are involved in supply chain and I guess want to have better collaboration with your vendors, more visibility, get better performance, might be a good platform to check out. Tom, help me understand like the root problem that you see your customers, those who are in supply chain, they're facing today.
Yeah, it's a great question and one that's hard to explain. Supply chain has been plagued with the problems, for many decades, and there's been a lot of innovation, but the way we like to look at the problem in the world that SourceDay solves and addresses and market is really around the buyers and the buyers specifically of direct materials or components and parts and finished goods that go into their finished product that they deliver to their customers. I like to talk about the buyers as kind of the unsung heroes of an organization. If you think about sales and the front of the house where they're just always focused on innovation to drive faster and more sales and speed, that piece is all well and good. But if you can't deliver that product because of a supplier miss or because of a lead time issue or just lack of visibility, which is what everyone in the world is seeing today, it's worthless. You really can't hit those revenue or customer commitments that you've spent so much money accelerating and driving more sales for. So the buyers have been really the unsung heroes and the last ones to really start to get innovation and automation outside of an ERP. So SourceDay was created out of my co-founder and I's, experience being in supply chain, where we've now created a platform that gives the buyers the ability to be strategic, drive that collaboration to the highest level of exceptions and misses that are going to cause an impact to the business or a risk to hitting customer targets, ultimately giving those buyers a tool and a platform that can hold the suppliers accountable and can really make those buyers be the unsung heroes and be strategic in the world.
I appreciate that perspective, the unsung heroes, because we may not look at that back end of the process, or often when we think of supply chain and consumer terms, we think of last mile delivery, like Amazon. Let me get it today. That whole conversation faster, but it's that you're focused more on that. What do you call it? That first mile? Is it that
first mile
initial step of
exactly.
Actually have to have the sources materials to get it? And I feel like every consumer has been experiencing shortage issues, particularly because of the pandemic. But it's just like intensified, and so it's very in your face.
Yeah, you're spot on.
You actually got a degree in supply chain from Texas A&M, right? So already early on, you've been in this world.
Absolutely, yeah. It was, not knowing at the time that I would be co-founding a company in the supply chain space, but very, very fortunate to have had that degree and that background to help us lead this charge.
Help me understand, like, okay, the journey that you've been on that got you where you are today. Because I love to just take a quick moment and hear what that's like. It's not like suddenly like, all right, yeah, I got a degree, I built a business, and all is well and good. You actually started by working in helping, I think, a large company Dell in the supply chain. So you saw the challenges come with it. Is that right?
Yeah. So my first job out of college was second shift boxing line supervisor, and so we're working 4 p.m. to 4 a.m., sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes, end of a quarter, running 28, 30 days straight. And oftentimes we'd run, we harder for the team members, right? And really got to that point where you had to run 7 days a week, 3 shifts because of supplier misses. You're shut down in the middle of a quarter because of a missing 5-cent foam end cap on a computer. That would cause us to send everyone home, and then you got to make that time up, right? So you send people home for 2-3 days a week, and then make it up over the next 30 days. So that real world experience, was really eye opening when I met my co-founder, who ran a manufacturing company for 10 years, and really also had the very same problems, which was the genesis of how we came about creating SourceDay.
Now you had another stint before starting SourceDay. Actually, what was it? Right Gift. So this isn't your first venture. So you actually started another company at the same time. Is that right? As you're like in business?
A little earlier. So it was my journey to entrepreneurship was probably very similar to most everyone else's. I was in a great job at a great organization, and just realizing being a number. Being in that role that I was in was an incredible experience, and I would never change it for the world, but it wasn't for me long term. And I would daydream every day, every night, and came to the conclusion of an idea called Right Gift, which was the kind of the pre-Amazon wish list world, where you could use Right Gift to create a wish list of items from anything, any website, any store, wedding, bridal showers, baby showers, whatever you name it. And I really spent 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. 5 or 6 days a week working with my development team over in Bangladesh, and building Right Gift from the ground up and bootstrapping it. And as crazy as that was, we got the product off the ground, and it was a passion project, right? There's no other way you really do something that level of hours. So it was incredibly eye-opening. I wasted a lot of my own money, fortunately, not my investors' money or any other money I raised, learning a lot of what not to do in building a software business and creating a company, and overbuilding a platform, and many other mistakes I made along the way. That really helped lead to, when I met my co-founder for SourceDay, that experience brought his vision and my experience with SourceDay, or with Right Gift, to help us build and create what is now known today as SourceDay. And we used the same team from my Right Gift development, and did the same path again. Worked a day job, and then nights and weekends spent building SourceDay from the ground up as we bootstrapped the business for the first 2 years.
First 2 years. That it's like you take all the lessons learned from your first endeavor into entrepreneurship. You're like, okay, great. That's good knowledge. Now apply it to the sector. Not follow the same mistakes. Of course, having the support of your family or your wife to make that happen, I'm sure that's its own, to go from one journey to the next one. Yeah, I'm ready for my next business.
Yeah, that's probably the craziest thing. It was an easy decision when my wife ultimately said, "You've spent enough of our life savings and in this journey, and it's not necessarily going fast enough in growth." It was growing, and that business exists today under kind of a bit of a pivot, and it's absolutely doing amazingly well. So it's exciting to see that business that I'm still a little bit of a piece of today, but new leadership team, and they're growing like crazy. But my wife ended very, to her credit, it was the right decision to put that to bed and quit burning our own savings, and then put my experience with supply chain and my co-founders, and building something that we were much more capable of making successful, and had a much larger audience at the time.
Wow. Now, for you to then jump into source code, you spent how many years building it? Help me understand like the journey that you guys were on.
Yeah, it was an overnight success. I mean, it only took us one day. No, I'm only kidding. Obviously, the project kicked off in 2013, and about a year into it, we did what most great entrepreneur failures do: is we pivoted, and relaunched a similar platform, but we made some pretty significant pivots. So it took us about 2.5 years to really build the enterprise platform that exists today, and continues to have a bulk of our spend go into R&D and development to continue making it greater. But we spent 2.5 years, had probably an infinite number of opportunities to hang it up and say, hey, this is just too hard, or we can't do it. But I think that's the number one thing that mentors and others kept us along the way, is just keep doing it, right? Don't give up, don't quit too soon. And we were able to actually get it off the ground in mid 2015. And
Yeah, what was that pivotal moment in 2015? Walk me through what happened there.
Yeah, that's a great story. So, we had a product. It was very minimum, as minimum of an MVP as you can get. We had built an integration to one single ERP called N4 Sightline, which was an ERP system that my co-founder ran when he was in manufacturing. And we knew that I think it was in March of 2015, there was a user conference happening in Nashville, Tennessee. So he and I took some time and took some time off work and family and flew out. And the two of us with Jack Daniel's little whiskey bottles as our handouts, because no one knew who we were. We're the new guys showing up to, new guys showing up to a conference that had been going on for 20 years. Small little show, 400 or 500, companies. And we just posted up with a cheap tablecloth banner and whiskey, Jack Daniel airplane bottles, and got a ton of attention at that. It ended up working, but we actually got our first 3 customers at that event. Wow. And that was really the turning point.
Selling with Jack Daniels. That's one way to get interest into a conference.
Yeah, and turns out that's not legal. So, if you're going to hand out booze at a conference, you certainly need to get approval beforehand, apparently.
Got it. Well, that's a good way to ask for forgiveness later when you try to test it. But it's got the initial interest and to grow from there. For you guys, what was kind of the movement beyond that? So you start to get your first few clients and drilling into this. I guess you established that product market fit.
We had a very early sense of product market fit. Again, the minimalist MVP solution you could imagine is what we sold to those first 3 customers. But what it showed us was that there is a massive problem in the market that's not being addressed. And we were able to, even with that minimal solution, we were able to put our customers' purchase order data into the cloud, into the SourceDay platform, and then give that visibility to their suppliers so that they could then start to collaborate against it. And that really created the ecosystem, at least within that ERP system, where we got our start and some of our fastest growth. We, I think, added another 3 or 4 customers throughout 2015. And then, continued to grow through other ERPs, throughout the ecosystem over time.
Those in supply chain, are they readily interested in adopting new technology?
No, absolutely not. I say, all joking aside, I think, I don't know that many people are readily, wanting to adopt new technology just for the sake of adopting new technology, right? You've got to be solving a very real problem and driving very real value. And I think, early on, we had a little bit of that, and we were lucky to, have found a niche very early that we could go solve. And that niche has now grown into, a category of, direct spend collaboration. And we've been able to create great partnerships with companies like Oracle, NetSuite, and Coupa, and many other ERPs that, have now kind of created that niche into an ecosystem and expand the value. But I think over time, when you start to build that category, the adoption and the need for wanting to adopt new technology does grow. But it took years of education and many rounds of fundraising to really educate the market away from status quo. Stop living in Excel, email, faxes in some cases. It was pretty incredible to see. We still run across customers that are faxing purchase orders.
That movement of the status quo to something better, were there any major hits that over the past 5-6 years since that conference that really helped you kind of level up and get that change mindset in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think, over the years, right, just getting more customers into the platform across different ERPs started to build a broader sense of how big the problem was, not just in, one ERP ecosystem, but really there wasn't a single ERP that was addressing this gap outside of the ERP's system. So, an enterprise resource planning tool is comprised of a material, an MRP, right, which does the materials planning and procurement. And once the purchase order demand gets generated, it goes into email, it goes into PDFs, it goes into Excel, and parts just show up when they show up. And more often than not, based on the data we see, it's about a third to 50% of the parts show up late. And that starts to drive significant costs and impact to your customers, ability to get their finished goods on time. So, the demand and the need, is continually grown, specifically in this age of, the Amazon effect, where consumers have become, just readily available to get something same day, right? Even within the same hour of ordering something, you can get things delivered to your home. That mentality has carried itself into the business world, where they cut a purchase order for specific parts to build a bus, or to build a oil and gas component or a healthcare component. They want it now, right? And so that without having visibility to that or collaboration with your suppliers in a very tight knit platform, you can't make that possible.
I really appreciate the analogy, because everyone's familiar with, yeah, let me just, I got Amazon Prime, I'll get that tomorrow, or maybe even today. But in the business world, in a B2B environment, you're saying that is now becoming the expectation in your suppliers. You want to say, all right, let's go ahead and we have to build this. Let's get this done now.
Right. Yeah. It's in going back to what you said earlier, right? The last mile versus what we are, which is what we really call the first mile, right? Amazon has perfected that last mile among many other great, direct to consumer organizations. But that big gap, that void between the ERP planning and scheduling and all the money that's being spent also on last mile with freight and logistics and transportation solutions, they've left basically a hole the size of Grand Canyon in every organization that sits between the ERP's planning and when it gets onto a freight carrier, whether it's a boat or a plane or whatever it may be. You can only control it between those two endpoints, right? You can't control the on-time delivery of a good or a product or a piece of material once it gets onto that freight mode, right? Once it's on the ocean freight, it's going to show up when it shows up. So that point that you can control is the critical point between purchase order creation, demand planning, and when it gets onto that mode of transportation, which is where SourceDay lives, right? Our ability to give customers the command and control over their supply chain, where there's opportunity to make it an improvement and to eliminate risk.
It makes it sound like, if we dive a little bit into the platform and tech, you're relying on the suppliers to be very active and involved in this process.
Yeah, without a doubt, next to your employees and really your customers, the maybe equal first place across those three would be your suppliers. And the worst part about that is your suppliers, you're not their only customer. They don't exist inside your four walls. They're trading partners, they're close partnerships, right? But at the end of the day, you're reliant on them, and it could be hundreds, in some cases, thousands of suppliers that you are reliant on to a fault to be able to deliver your finished good. And that's how, you look at a supply chain, and I like to often call it, the miracle of the supply chain, right? If you don't have every single component that goes into, a bus or an airplane fuselage or a piece of landing gear, then you can't ship it, right? It's just physically not possible. You can't ship half of an airplane fuselage, right? You've got to have all of the components and you can't recognize the revenue until you ship it. So you start to do unnatural things like air freight, all of your Peloton bicycles for the cost of $100 million, which was done over the last year and a half by Peloton, because you couldn't trust your suppliers to get everything to the freight carrier in time to get it to your customers. And you start losing customers to competitors. So unnatural things, again, like putting $100 million into air freight, starts to really destroy and erode your margins, right? So that ability to really put some command and control, again, like I said, right, into the things that exist outside your four walls, like your suppliers. Imagine, how critical that piece of your business is. And, they're not reliant. I mean, they're just doing the best they can, right? They've got hundreds, maybe thousands of customers, and you need to give them the best opportunity to meet your needs as you can.
Have you seen pushback from suppliers to this type of adoption of new way to do business?
Absolutely. And that, that's funny you mentioned that. That is the number one question that we get on every discovery, sales, prospect call ever. And, it's automatic. And nowadays, right, honestly, we just preempt it. We say, we know what you're thinking. Your question is, or your objection is, my suppliers won't use it. But the reality is our data and our success is we now are able to give a guaranteed commitment, or you can opt out of a contract with us if we don't get you 80% or 100%, whatever that metric is for their specific business need to deem it successful in the contract. And we've never lost a customer during the onboarding phase as a part of that commitment to get those suppliers onboarded. And it's not just sheer luck, right? We have built the platform from day one to be as big of a benefit or a value add to the customer as it is to their suppliers. Suppliers don't pay to use our platform. We're typically just looked at as another portal. But the major difference between us and the portals that have existed for decades is we actually built this solution with the suppliers in mind. Most portals fail because they're built just for the buyer side, and suppliers get zero value. Sometimes it's entirely impossible to adopt and train and onboard yourself. We do all the supplier training, onboarding, support, adoption, continual check-ins with suppliers. We never charge suppliers, and we built the solution around the life of a supplier. How can we make it easier for them in their day job to be able to service their customers more effectively? And with that mindset, we're able to build a solution that makes supplier adoption not automatic, but almost guaranteed to 100%.
In many ways, you have two customers, just one of them doesn't pay you.
Absolutely. Seems like a great business model.
Yeah.
No, but joking aside, right? We wouldn't be successful, and we wouldn't be the company we are if we didn't have supplier success. So we look at them as a customer, right? We treat them like a customer. And obviously our pricing model bakes in the fact that we have to support them as a customer, but that's part of our success. And that's part of the real ROI and the value that we drive to our customers is because we get such high supplier adoption.
Did you know the power or that this is the successful piece that would make it work from the beginning? Like, did you already go in with that mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question and a good story behind it. On the very first day or week that we started brainstorming on the idea of SourceDay, we had a whiteboard and working in a tiny little room and in a spare office we found. We wrote two things on the board. One of the sides of the whiteboard was really, buyer and supplier adoption, right? How do we go get both sides of the marketplace? Because that's effectively what it is. And the other side was company culture. We had both been at organizations that, were great companies, but the culture was terrible. The environment was not what we wanted to build or be a part of. So we were very focused on both of those components from day one. We knew that as a successful organization, we had to get suppliers adopting the solution or it would fail before it even started. So yeah, absolutely was a part of our thesis from day one.
Speaking of the culture and the team, obviously that's what makes this all possible. How big is the team today?
We're sitting at about just over 70 full-time employees and probably another dozen or so interns and contractors, and hiring 30 by the end of the year.
Oh, wow. Is there any lessons learned when it comes to building and growing a team as a leader that you can think of the past?
Yeah, probably more than I can even think of right now. I learned a lot of lessons with RightGift, but we made different mistakes, of course, building SourceDay, and probably repeated some of the same RightGift mistakes as well. I think the number one thing, right, is obviously be focused on hiring people with, a well-rounded background in both with domain experience and domain knowledge in your industry, and also some that don't have it. So you can bring in different mindsets and people that are going to look at the problem you're solving differently. The number one thing that I always go with when hiring, and I always challenge my team to go with hiring, is always just go with your gut. And your gut will always tell you, a great bit about, is this person a great culture fit, right? Because our organization is different than every other organization, as every other organization is different from us, right? And we're very much a fast-paced, high energy kind of exciting, quick fun place to work, and I think with a lot of opportunity. Right, we've been fortunate to be able to promote probably half a dozen or more people from the organization up through into leadership, which is pretty incredible given our size. So no, we're looking for self-starters, that aren't afraid of going into a company that might not have all of the resources or all the answers, and are willing to have grit and determination to just solve problems. But I don't know if that answered your question. The number one thing I think in growth is you're going to make mistakes in hiring. You're going to have to part ways with people, and it doesn't mean that that they're not good at what they do. It just means it wasn't the right fit, right? But the biggest thing to do around that is hire slow and fire fast. And I hate that saying, but that's the truth.
For you guys, after the co-founders, you began, you're rolling, years are passing. What would you say one of the key or pivotal roles that you filled, or hires that you brought on that really played to your ability to grow and scale?
Honestly, all of them. But I'll because what I always talk with the team about is there's really no one single role or person in the organization, myself included, that makes us successful. Right, we couldn't do it without the team as a collective, and we've learned that in some ways the hard way by not having enough product management. Right, throughout the time, the last few years, we've recognized we needed more product managers as our product continues to get wider and deeper. But there's not a single role that will kill an organization. But I think if you look at a true SaaS company, there's a couple of metrics that are obvious that you have to have. Right, you've got to have growth in bookings. And then as equal to that, as important as that is, you also have to have retention, right? So we made an incredible investment early on in our organization's history to put people dedicated and focused on customer success, not support people, not people answering trouble ticket or chat, but people actually just holding weekly, monthly, and quarterly business reviews with our customers to make sure that they're getting the value that we sold them. And when they're not, we go and, how do we fix it, right? How do we, change that experience for the better? And if you don't have retention or a solid customer success team from the beginning, you'll lose more customers than you can create.
Can you think of any stories or examples of where it gives you an example of how you put customer success as an importance, like any things where it went bad and you were focused on fixing it?
Yeah, that's a good one. Early on, right? We were a mighty team of probably 6 or 7 people and had probably about 20 or 25 or so customers. And, we were all wearing all the hats, right? I think at one point they even let me write a line of code, which was probably a huge mistake. But I'm sure I was being supervised. But I spent a lot of time early on with personally onboarding suppliers and onboarding and supporting users, being the service and support desk. But I think as we continued to grow, you start to see roles start to percolate and grow with demand, right? We started to see, all right, now we've got 25, 30 customers. We can't afford to lose even 1 or 2 a year. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to continue to grow, at the rate we want to grow. So we need to go invest in a customer success person. And then, you get to a point where you say, all right, now we've got, 5,000 suppliers in the company, in the platform using it daily. How do we go make sure they're successful? So now we have a customer success team and support team dedicated to supplier users. So you start to, over time, organically see pieces of the business growing. And you of course, need to be ahead of that and be proactive and process and planning and tooling around those growth and scalability issues that happen over time naturally, so that you can, mitigate the risk of churn. You're going to lose customers no matter what you do, because that's just natural. But mitigating that with putting the right people and resources and tools in place is critical early on.
Focusing on enterprise clients, that's its own game of when it comes to sales and marketing. What have you found as far as tactics that work really well to be able to sell the enterprise?
Yeah, it's an incredible piece of the business in itself, as you mentioned, right? I think there's different people and different experience levels to support mid-market versus an enterprise account. We got our first Fortune 50 customer when we were about a 2-year-old company. And I think we had 12 people in the organization. And they were a global Fortune 50, $80 billion company. And they looked at big competitors and they took a gamble and went with SourceDay, and they're still a customer today. And in fact, just signed a 3-year renewal. So over time, right, it was critical to be able to build a team around companies like that. So that first customer, I was supporting it personally. I flew to China the year we took them live and helped onboard suppliers, helped onboard their buying team, spent a week over there with one of our developers and their team, and did a ton of hands-on learning for both sides. And they were a great partner for us, as they knew we were a younger company, but they recognized the value of our solution was going to solve their problem as long as they leaned in to help us grow with them.
What did that sales pitch look like?
This is a great story. So it was actually our second year at that user conference that I mentioned earlier. It was our first one we went to. So this was year 2. And my co-founder and I were the only sellers we had until that month. We hired another sales member who joined the team. He had 1 or 2 years in sales experience. And it was his first month, and we couldn't miss this conference. So my co-founder and I went to this conference, and we got a date to go do an on-site demo with that prospect. And we said, well, this company is so big, there's no way we win it anyway. Let's send him and let him cut his teeth on this demo and let him figure it out. So we couldn't miss the opportunity to go get in front of, hundreds of customers, versus one that we thought we had a long shot of winning anyway. So we sent him, and, he won them over. Long story short, they came back and told me years later that he won them over with the demo on that first meeting. And we won that deal effectively over the series of 6 months after that. But that meeting kept us in that deal. And, today he's now been promoted to a VP. He runs an entire business unit for our organization. And it's been an incredible story and journey for him. And seeing that customer now thrive with SourceDay has just been a very surreal moment for us.
Was there like any special ingredients, or was it just the right place, right time, right person at that right moment? I mean, how would you repeat that?
Yep. And so we've been fortunate to repeat it many times over. We have, a few dozen large enterprise customers globally using SourceDay that are the really large customers. And we've been able to repeat that just, through customer success stories from these large customers. Using the big name brands, the household names that people recognize, and promoting, their success with our platform to the world. So we've done that at several events and, webinars and white papers and case studies, and that's continued to help drive organic enterprise growth. And we have also invested heavily in marketing and sales enterprise efforts to continue to drive that account-based marketing and really build that funnel. But it takes a concerted effort, and it's a commitment. Those deal cycles can take 18 to sometimes 24, 30 months. So it's an investment for sure.
For you as a leader, just kind of you bootstrapped at the beginning, if I remember correctly. When did you get funding, and what was that decision process of making that happen?
Well, we wanted to eat meals and be able to afford life. I had just found out that we were going to have our third child the week I quit my full-time job. Oh, wow. At the time, we had raised just a little bit of friends and family money. But we made the decision. My wife, being the amazing rock star mother, was all in as well. So we continued down the path, and at that time we probably had about 20 customers, and again, we had raised a little bit of friends and family money to get to that point. And all joking aside, right, we knew that when we had about 6 or 7 customers, we were onto something, and we needed to go into the business full time. So my co-founder went into the business first. And about 6 months later, we had raised enough money for me to come into the business full time. And we had already had about 4 full-time employees before he and I were full-time.
Oh, wow.
So it was an incredible journey to get to that point of just commitment and working nights and weekends and really going all in, right, and not giving up. And the roller coaster of an early stage startup is very real. There's a lot of opportunities, like I said earlier, to just give up. But we were on to something that we knew would be great.
Was there any favorite quote or guiding principle or something that you just kind of held on to keep going?
I don't know that there's a quote or a saying other than, the number one thing that we always kept telling ourselves is that, we loved what we were doing. We knew that there was a huge problem that we were solving globally in the market. And it was just, never give up, right? We just knew that we couldn't give up. We went through a lot of personal and business adversity over the years, just getting to the point where we raised our first dollar. And then when you raise that money, now you're responsible, fiduciarily responsible to those investors, right? And at that point, it's bigger than you, and it's bigger, than the founders. We want to go create something that can create jobs and create, wealth and experiences for people to, create their career growth that they want to achieve. So for us, it's really been about the journey and just knowing, long story to your question is, never give up, always keep iterating. Things are going to break. You're going to make wrong decisions, but you got to pick yourself up and go try something different and keep trying to solve the problem.
What are you most excited about if you look ahead for SourceDay and what's coming up?
Yeah, well, we're about to hit a major revenue milestone and employee milestone. As I said, I think we'll probably get to about 100 people by the end of the year. So I truly enjoy the people, both customers and team members. That aspect for me of growth, it just is an incredible experience to see. You're helping young professionals really build their careers and start families and start to really go down the life journey and have SourceDay be a small part of that is really just incredible. And employees will come and go, but we've managed to build a really incredibly successful, fun, exciting team with a great culture. That is the most fun for me. I just enjoy talking with the team. I have one-on-ones regularly with as many people that want to meet with me in the company, and that's part of where I spend a good piece of my time is just making sure that the people that run our business, that the most important piece of our company is our people, are enjoying it, feeling challenged, and getting what they want out of it for their career.
A fun question I always like to ask: there's always apps and tools, yes, for work, for supply chain, but also for personal use. Is there any just favorite apps that you use, just like cheap ones that you recommend?
That's a good question. Probably nothing off the wall. At first when we adopted Slack very early on, my engineering team, brought it to us. We were on Skype and they said, "Hey, we need to use Slack." And I was like, "Man, what is this?" It's just another IM tool. And, so we adopted it, and, I loved it at first, and I've learned to love to hate it. Cause it's just another inbox. Right. But, I think what I would say about it, maybe the answer to your question would really be the integrations that we've done with Slack that enable our team to be more effective remotely. Some pretty exciting things. I mean, we've integrated to all of our development tools, to a big piece of all of our marketing lead gen tools. And really, to answer your question, one of the most fun things I think that we've done is we've created, within Slack, we've created this channel called the Rockstars channel. And it uses a plugin called Karma. And so Karma might be, as a leader of any company, it's a fun way for peers to give peers recognition throughout the organization. So if somebody helps you solve a problem or saves a customer issue or whatever it may be, right? And the karma points can be redeemed for, anything, right? You can give to donation charities, you can give TIFF treats cookies to a team member or a department, or you can buy a happy hour, you can give yourself a gift card. You can do whatever you want. A lot of our employees will give to charity. They'll redeem their karma points, every couple of months to a charity donation. So it's really been a great way through COVID, especially, right, for us to really stay connected. And really, I think peer-to-peer recognition is super critical, and even more so as we're going through this, kind of remote type world.
That's awesome. Now I got to go look into this Karma Slack ability. That's the type of thing that's kind of fun. You never know about. Tom, thank you so much for sharing the journey that you've been on in the supply chain world, seeing the problems. You're like, all right, I'm going to solve this. You see the opportunities, you're growing it, and yet the future is still wide open of what you guys can continue to grow into. Those that want to learn more, you can head over to sourceday.com and be able to get a demo and explore it further. Thanks so much for your time, Tom. This is great.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Appreciate your time.
We'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.